What's up? What's up? What's up? Give me 1 second. Nicholas, are you there?
Yeah,
What's up?
not much.
That's a great entrance. I just love it. I just love it. That's a great entrance. Brilliant.
Well, I didn't know that you were starting it.
I
I
told you
didn't know
that.
that that was the entrance.
I told you that I was starting it.
Usually you give me a little heads up.
I gave you the heads up, and we are fashionably late as all NBA games start. So we're giving
I
you the
could have
full.
played a whole nother fucking round of Apex, dude. Are you kidding me?
Well, you're the one that went off screen for like 3 minutes. So
Told you could have started it. Sounds like a you problem.
well, I didn't want to go alone.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. All right, I'm Ty Yeager. That's Nicholas Yarbrough. We will have Noah McGuire George joining us shortly. But we got a lot to talk about. It's Tuesday of our draft week, the Tuesday edition of draft week, and we have a lot to cover.
Yeah.
We have a lot. There's a new team interested in DeMar DeRozan that's been reported that we're going to talk about some trade ideas along with that. And
Only
of
one
course,
trade idea.
well, there's a one trade idea that's kind of like just like two different versions of it. So, but I'm curious to see what everyone else's views are on this. We're going to talk. Of course, we're going to take your questions, your hot takes, your trade ideas. We are going to break them down, and we're going to have some fun with it. Isn't that right, Nick?
Yeah, I guess.
You guess. You guess. All right. Is there anything that you want to mention that you want to bring up before we get started?
48 hours from now, we'll know who we drafted.
That's gonna be fun. So, but
I'll work early for it too, so I'm ready.
we're going to be in the studio for that. We're not going to be in my beautiful room that I've set up for everyone to admire, but we're going to be in the Gage studio over in Fort Worth. So we're going to have some fun. Mac and Noah are both going to be joining us too. So the whole crew is going to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be broadcasting the whole draft. So for any surprises that are going to happen, we're going to be ready. We're going to start that. I want to say we're going to start. The draft starts at 8. No, 7. Starts at 7. So we're going to start our stream about 6 p.m. or so. So keep an eye on that for all our social medias. You can follow us at the Line Pod, or me at the Ty Yeager, or you can follow Nicholas Yarbrough on Twitter as well. So, but it is draft week, baby. 48 hours. We're going to have some fun. We've got a lot to talk about. Before we get started, At the Line is brought to you by the Spurs Zone. So make sure to check out the Spurs Zone for all the latest news and articles on all the latest draft news and free agent news that's going to be dropping in the next 2 weeks. I just had an article that we're going to talk about real soon, but make sure to check that out, and also make sure to check out Locked On Spurs for all the latest Locked On Spurs podcast. So if you want some more Spurs content, go check that out at the Spurs Zone at News 4 San Antonio or Fox 29. And that's it. So with plugs out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with the latest news that just happens to be the Wizards and DeMar DeRozan have mutual interest. So, in a report from Quentin Mayo, who is a Wizards insider, who was formerly of NBC Sports Washington, DC, I mean, and then also he's right now with, I want to say, MGM. So he is bringing down the scoop. He said the Wizards have internally discussed a handful of names so far this offseason, I'm told. That includes DeMar DeRozan, Dallas's Dorian Finney-Smith, and Memphis's Dillon Brooks and Justice Winslow. And he also puts up a price point that DeMar DeRozan is willing to accept between $20 to $23 million compared to his $27.7 million earned this last year on his player option. And mutual interest is present. So, first off, Nick, what do you think about this interest between DeMar DeRozan and the Wizards?
I think it's pretty people are saying Jake the Nick said it's confusing. I don't think it's confusing at all. I think he is what they need. They need a playmaker outside of Russ who can actually score at will when Bradley Beal's off kilter a little bit. They need someone who can shoot the mid-range really well. I mean, they have 3-point shooting. They have, some size. I don't know. I don't think it's as weird as people say it would be. And also, I'm pretty sure that DeMar is pretty close with both Russ and Beal. So
I believe
that
that
makes
is.
sense too.
I believe that is right.
Like especially Russ, if I remember. Kind of like how he is with Harden. He's really close with Harden.
Yeah, it makes sense to me if you, especially if you look at it in the terms of that. You have two guys in Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook who are both on the books for at least one more season before their player option, and so it makes sense in that sense that that Washington might be looking to take advantage of still having these guys on their books and wanting to just go for it. And who was not better than that than have DeMar DeRozan on your team? So
Exactly. Welcome, Noah.
Noah, he's in. You're a little quiet. You're a little quiet.
Yeah, give me
No,
a
he's
sec.
good now. He's good.
There
now.
you're good. Now you're good.
Oh,
But-
shit.
Noah
We were
Guard
just
George,
talking
everyone.
about the fit of DeMar with the Wizards, which I think it's a pretty good fit, especially if they give us Rui. I think they're in win now mode, so they're just gonna go all in, and like they have to, right? They kind of have to where they're at.
Yeah, they have to.
And I mean, if they don't win, like they still have DeMar, Russ, and Beal to trade, so you know they can just get a bunch of picks and start over from the beginning. Which, if they don't win now, they're gonna have to do anyways, with or without DeMar. So
Noah, what do you think of that? What do you think of that buzz with DeRozan and the Wizards have mutual interest?
Yeah, sorry, 1 second. I am having a bad time here. Give me a second.
He's having a bad time,
Okay.
everyone.
All right, I'm good now. Yeah, so I think it's interesting for sure. I mean, we heard on the jump the other day, Mark J. Spears and Bobby Marks were talking about him being linked to both Los Angeles teams and the Chicago Bulls, and so I'm not surprised that teams that are sort of might think that they're a piece away want to pursue him, thinking that he's the missing link. And I think that's an ill-advised trade for the Wizards, but it's definitely one you can see them doing. I mean, I'm not going to say that they're a bad organization, but they've definitely made some questionable decisions. Like, if I'm then, I'm trying to hit the reset button because clearly it's not working with Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook, and I don't think any of their young talent is really all that great.
you don't like Rui?
No, not really. He's been pretty, like, awful as a pick and roll defender in the NBA. He's fine man to man. He's not super switchable. He guards 3-4 pretty exclusively, a little too small to guard like traditional fives, which isn't a big deal. I mean, you don't have a lot of those bruisers left. I mean, you got guys like Enes Kanter, Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, Jusuf Nurkic. But on the other end, I'm just really not that like impressed by him. You know, I'm not saying he's not a good player, but certainly someone who, to me, he's not any better like this year really than he was as a rookie. I think he improved marginally from 3-point range, but when you improve from I think it was 29% or so to about 32 or 33%, you know, that's not not good. You're still below average in that aspect, and he finished pretty poorly at the rim for someone as big as he is. So I just am not really that impressed by him. I wouldn't really be that intrigued, especially if it means he's taking minutes away from, you know, possibly Luka Šamanić if you have John Collins joining. You know, you got to find minutes for Luka that way too if John Collins is there, and then assuming you might draft a Şengün or Kai. To me, Roy is just an obstacle to other guys who you might want to be playing minutes.
I can see that, but I would like to defend Rui a little bit and come out and say that he hasn't shown much growth because it looks like he's in arguably one of the worst development staffs in the league. Like, Washington isn't really known for developing players, which is kind of sad because I think if we had drafted him and he had played a year in Austin and kind of went through our program, he would look really good right now. And I think we were pretty close to drafting him, right? But he kind of fell, or he kind of jumped up a little bit.
Yeah, no, he definitely did. When I wrote my article a few years ago about, you know, who are the sort of dream scenarios for the Spurs, I put him there at 19 as sort of like, that's your dream scenario. That's like the guy who you want to get. Because I think in the Spurs system, I mean, they're known for player development, obviously, and getting the most out of guys. And he was also someone who projected to potentially play right away. It's not as though he's been bad. I mean, 46% from the field is above league average. He's a pretty good free throw shooter, so you would imagine that he might be able to extend his range because the form looks fine. But I don't know. At this point, he's 21, 22. He's going to be 23 this year, I think, or he might already be 23. He already is 23. So I'm not saying he's old. He's definitely not old, but I don't know if he's going to have the touches or minutes necessary to make a jump because you're not sending him to Austin at this point, and he definitely doesn't belong there. He definitely belongs in a rotation. I just don't know if it's in any capacity more than just an average starter.
What are your thoughts of instead of Rui, maybe like someone like Denny, who's still a bit young, who kind of could fit somewhere, not in a starting lineup for us, but could kind of ride the bench for a little bit and see if we can bring out any of that potential that he kind of had going into the draft, and kind of for the reason why he was picked, what, 9th, right?
I think he was picked 9th overall, ninth by the Wizards. Yeah, I like Denny quite a bit. I was high on him last year. I had him 7th on my big board, and
they do not seem high on him.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have a great season, but he also got injured. I don't know if y'all remember, he had like a
foot injury, right?
Remember, it was like a right fibular something. I don't know, something in his leg. It was like a pretty big deal. He missed quite a few games. I think he missed like 20 games his rookie season.
A right fibular hairline fracture.
There you go. Yeah, I couldn't remember it off the top of my head, but I like him. I think he's still a guy who would be worth bringing back. Obviously, you know, the Spurs were interested in him. They sent scouts to go see him play for Maccabi Tel Aviv a couple years ago. They also had Pop visiting with him at the Basketball Without Borders, so he's familiar with him in that aspect. And he's someone to me who sort of slides in perfectly to the lineup. And I know you said not really like as a starter, but if you, for whatever reason, wanted to keep Devin or Lonnie on the bench, I think he could be like a spot starter at this point. I just think like the things that he's got to get good at are like shooting. I mean, because he's not really like much of a self-creator, so he's got to be a better spot-up shooter, and he just didn't shoot that well this year. And I don't know. Maybe he looks different in a different situation. Like you said, Wizards aren't really the best developmental system. Obviously, they got John Wall, Bradley Beal, but that's the first pick, the third pick. Those guys usually work out. And guys like, God, what was the guy's name? Troy Brown Jr.? I thought he looked really good. I thought he was going to have a really big role with the Wizards. And then they didn't play him, and he got traded to Chicago. So, yeah, it's a weird situation there. If they're not high on him, I think you might as well try to buy low.
With Denny, going with that shooting you're talking about, it also doesn't help that he took just maybe 6 more shots than Devin did all season 2. So maybe giving a little more volume might improve the shooting to see where it is, but he only took 312 shots last season, which is not that much.
Yeah, I mean, also Denny Avdia was not a good shooter.
Yeah.
In the for Maccabi Tel Aviv over in the Israeli league, he just wasn't. And that was something that I think everybody sort of knew was something he needed to work on. Obviously, before the draft, he was posting videos all the time where he's working on his form, he's working on a shot. He made like 20 in a row, 30 in a row. It's like, look at me, I'm working on something. But obviously, everyone knows there's a big difference between empty gym and playing in a game. And really, I mean, like the stats don't back up that he was a good shooter. His free throw shooting was really poor. And I think that was the number one thing that really kept him from being, you know, at least on my big board, being like a top 5 guy last season. So maybe Chip England works with him. I don't know, but that would be cool to see him join the Spurs because I still like him quite a bit.
And so just think about going back to DeRozan and the interest being there is, yeah, thanks, Mac. I see that. Mac's calling me a cuck. So going back to what I was talking about, So DeRozan is clearly interested in Spurs, or at least the interest is mutual. Not the Spurs, the Wizards. And unfortunately, the Wizards have a lot of money tied up already. $121 million already tied up, with 34 and 44 tied up to Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook. Can you believe Russell Westbrook is getting $44 million a year?
That is just disgusting. Makes my stomach sick.
And he has a $47 million player option.
Mm-hmm.
At least Bradley Beal's 28. But so one of the deals I came up with, it was, I'm going to pull it up on this end.
That's such a crazy contract, dude. Just looking at the number, that's so crazy, dude.
So one of the deals I came up with was in a sign trade for DeRozan for the Wizards. They would send back Davis Bertans, who's getting over $16 million a year, $16 million annually, along with Rui Hachimura, or you can really interchange him with Denny, and a first round pick somewhere, either this year's or next year's or some sort of
It'd
future
probably
pick.
have to be this year's.
It would have to be next year's because they can't trade picks this year. Like you can't do sign and trades. Like for example, if you sign and trade DeMar DeRozan, you can't do that right now.
So
Well, no, we're
can
talking
only-
about like the word in to pick our guy, right? That would be the scenario.
Oh
like,
yeah, no, I'm
pick
just
who we
saying
wanna
like that very rarely happens. Just because the way that it would work is like you have them agree right beforehand. But
Yeah.
then there's
Mhm.
always a chance that someone comes and calls them and is like, hey, I have a better deal. So then they're like, well, why would I want to pick this guy now? I could go pick. So it's hard to like get those deals done because free agency, you know, it doesn't open up for I don't think until like August.
Wait,
6th?
isn't there a rule in place where if there's a spoken upon agreement between two NBA parties or a draft pick, it can't be broken at that point? If it's
I don't
before
think-
free agency?
Yeah, I don't think so because I don't think they can actually like. I think they can do it behind closed doors, but no, I don't think it's like an official thing because I think that's.
I think we looked that up. Hold
So
on.
I mean, you definitely can. You can look it up, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, that you can't do that.
So we'll just say in the scenario then that's a future first. Let's just say
Yeah,
in
I'd
the
be
scenario.
fine with that, a future first, because there's a good chance that they end up blowing it up. Because even if you have DeMar DeRozan, Bradley Beal, and Russell Westbrook, that's not a very good team. I mean, they could potentially say, you know what, it's not working, and at the trade deadline, blow it up, and then maybe you're looking at a lottery pick.
So, and I would think it would have protections, but even then, even if you do get the next year picks after whichever year it is, because the protections get activated, it's still most likely going to be a good pick because it's Washington. What are we saying? But I was saying this one because in terms of the deal is DeRozan's contract number is around 20 to 23 million, which most likely his agent leaked, which is. And luckily, that gives us a price point to work with in terms of sign trades and knowing how much money some teams can take on. By setting this trade that Davis, since he is getting paid, he's on a very bloated contract. You just take him back because that's how you're going to clear up money for Washington. You get a young guy in Rui or Denny back as a return as a gift for taking on that bloated contract along with that first round pick. So, but what do you think about this trade overall though, in terms of for a possible sign trade?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm okay with it if it ends up in the end getting you like a first rounder, and Denny, like if it gets you Denny too. But I also think it's really important just to be careful when you're looking at like roster construction because I don't think Denny. I don't know how to say this in like a way that's not inflammatory, but I don't really think Denny is anything more than like a connector piece. Like I think he's your third, fourth best player on a championship team, and unfortunately, I think the Spurs already have a lot of those
Like
kind of
six
guys.
those.
You know, they have a ton of those guys already, so it's really tough now. Like even if let's say that they decide to blow it up at midseason, I don't think they're bad enough in the Eastern Conference to get you like a top pick in the draft. So even if you're in the lottery, then you're back in the lottery at 12, 13. Maybe they don't, maybe they're not in the lottery and it gets you a playoff pick, and so you're picking, 15, 16, 17, and at that point now you're adding another guy who's probably, the fourth, fifth best player on a championship team.
Why
So
would
it's
we
just- you're
include
going to be
Luka?
loaded that way.
There's no reason to include Luca, bro.
Yeah.
What do you have against Luca? You've said that so many times in different streams, man.
For what?
Someone
In this trade, so Luca and DeMar for Davis, Rui, and the first. It's like, or the first round pick. I'm like, why?
like I don't know what.
There's no point in it.
Yeah.
Especially in a position where we're so thin. Like, I don't understand that one bit.
So by the way, chat, if you do have any trade ideas, especially since Sacker Kappa, is that how you say it?
Oh yeah.
So he mentioned, because like on the jump, like we said earlier, that they mentioned teams like the Bulls, Knicks, and Clippers, and Lakers would be interested in DeMar. If you guys have any sort of trade idea, send it in chat. We'll talk about it. 'Cause
Lakers.
So with the Lakers,
No, there's one trade and you have to make it, and I think it's pretty clear, right?
send it.
It's 22, Kuz, and then one of getting KCP's contract or Trez off their books so that they can sign him for because DeMar might take 18 to 22 million, something like that. He'd take a pay cut. That's a trade, and they can't do much more than that. I don't really want Caruso. I think the Spurs can actually do something with Kuzma. I think he has. He got lost in the sauce in Hollywood, but I still think he's there, and I still think he's talented enough because we saw it whenever they sucked. He was playing really well. Yeah, I think it's Kuz 22 and maybe getting KCP's fat contract off of there.
Noah, what do you think?
No, I'm fine with that. I think getting a first round pick, and then if you get KC, and I know somebody in the chat just said Montrez over KCP, but I honestly think like playoff teams are going to value KCP more than they do Montrez. I mean, you saw Montrez get benched by the Lakers this year, and KCP played again and again and again because he's 3-and-D, prototypical guy. I think he's undervalued around the league, but I don't think he's important for what you're trying to do if you're the Spurs. So he's just a piece that you can move and potentially get a pick at some point. But with Kyle Kuzma, I think he's a fine player, but I think the way you saw him when he was averaging, I think close to 18 points or something like that, I don't really think that's who he is as a.
I know it's not
player.
indicative of like what he would be playing as. I'm just saying that the talent is there to provide in some way, some valuable way to a team. I'm not expecting him to be like an 18, 7, and 4 guy, but if we could get 12, 5, and 2, something like that, 6'10", he can shoot, can't really defend as far as I've seen. Like he hustles, he's just not very good. But
he's definitely improved in that aspect at least. I like Kyle Kuzma a lot. Like
if he could just lubricate a trade to get us that 22 and get rid of DeMar, like I don't care who they send. I just want 22, honestly.
Yeah, it's for me because I was actually looking at it that Montrez actually had a better LeBron rating than KCP, which is interesting to me. But I think it definitely depends on what the Spurs would do. Maybe they get KCP and they try to trade him off somewhere else to a contender that would need him and get some future draft capital as a result.
Yeah.
You never know. Or like Sacra Kappa said that Montrez could be a fit at the power forward instead for you guys behind.
I mean, Kuzma's a power forward and he can shoot.
Yeah, and that's also, I think that would become the issue in this sense is that you start overloading stuff and you don't find minutes for guys like Luka. You don't get your minutes are going to be kind of weird if you do bring in John Collins. I think that's kind of the one negative of this, but honestly, you can always move Harold or Kuzma somewhere else and get additional assets or something like that. Especially if you're looking at more of a kind of a rebuild and you want to get more draft capital. I think plenty of teams would be happy to take some of those guys for maybe some future first in the long run. I
think we need to stop like looking at trades and stuff through the lens of us having Collins, because I still don't think we sign him, even though I'd still kind of like to. Like, we can't think of it like that. Every time that anyone's ever talked about trades, including like in this call, it's been like, if we sign Collins, it's like we shouldn't look at any trade through the lens of us signing Collins, because I still don't think it happens. I still think he takes less money and runs it back. But I still get your point. I just think that if the choice is between Kuzma and Trez with KCP, I'd take Kuzma because he's on a 3-year deal. He fits the league a little bit better than Trez, even though Trez is like a really good kind of small ball, 6-man bully ball kind of guy. He still got benched like hard in the playoffs, enough to where he is at odds with the Lakers organization. And Kuzma's kind of like a bit of a one sec, Spurs fan. Harold can be moved or just be cap space when he walks. I mean, Kuzma can be moved too. Like, it's not like he's untradeable. The meme around this Lakers trying to trade Kuzma is because they value him as like, oh, we'll give you Kuzma in 22 for like Bradley Beal. Like that's the joke. Kuzma still holds value to teams. It's not like he's some like, it's not like he's Denzel Valentine,
Yeah. And also, if you look at their cap table for the Lakers, they don't really have anyone else to trade. So it's like you're kind of stuck with only 2 options, and that's KCP and Kuzma, and maybe Harold he's most likely going to accept his 9.7 player option.
Hear me out. 22 and THT for DeMar in like a second. No, I'm kidding. Taylor Horton Tucker's pretty good though. I'm a fan.
You know what?
Even though someone made a remark about him being like a bad locker room guy. What's that from? I've never heard that.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never heard that either.
That kind of worried me, but if y'all haven't heard of it, then I'm not gonna worry about it.
All right, now I'm kind of curious with that Casey. I'm just trying the Taylor Horton Tucker trade just to see if it works, because I'm just kind of curious.
Don't want KCP on the books. Spurs don't have the best track record making deals. No, it would be a salary dump, man. I mean, it would like, it would kind of. Oh, and I think that we would sign like they would sign THT, so it'd be a double sign and trade. But KCP would just be here for a year. We'd take that kind of big contract off of their books, and he could provide enough for us because he can still shoot. He can kind of defend. I mean, he can defend. It's not he can kind of defend. He's like a hustle player. He reminds me of like a way better Dante Cunningham. Like he can shoot, he can defend, he can move around, and he makes big plays. And he hits clutch threes, man.
Noah, Mac
I
misses
like
your
him too.
face.
Yeah.
Hey, I miss him too. Hey, I'm not even seeing the chat. I switched back to like a Google Doc that I was looking at. I had some like
There
little
we
notes
go.
here, but yeah, I miss him too. He's coming, right? He's still coming, right? Like
Yes,
he's
he's.
coming to- yeah, we're gonna see him soon.
So he says
yeah.
he says he misses your face specifically.
That's rough, because I honestly, that's why I don't have the video on. I'm looking rough right now.
I'm honestly not. I put on a shirt and wore a cap because I didn't want to mess with my hair today.
But
I'm not.
THT has a 7'1" wingspan, right?
Yeah, he's got a really long wingspan.
That's
It's pretty
absolutely
crazy.
insane. Like that is insane.
But remember, the Lakers are acting just like their fans, and Taylor Horton Tucker is off the table apparently.
Well, we don't know that.
It was a joke. It was a joke.
I was about to
Yeah,
say
I know
the
that
Lakers.
they actually like pretty guarded with THT because LeBron James like funneled him to the team. I don't think they were going to pick him there, and he was someone who LeBron had known since he was in high school, and he's like, yeah, I've been following this guy, and so he told the Lakers to pick him, and they ended up picking him. So I think as long as LeBron's there and he believes in Taylor Horton Tucker rather, I think he's probably there to stay.
All right, let's go ahead and move to some draft stuff. Jake Snake actually brings up a good question, and I think this is perfect for Noah. Thoughts on the Keon Johnson buzz, especially with the Ringer having him at number 12 in their latest mock.
Noah's a huge fan. I know that.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I don't care that the Spurs have like a million guards. I think you got to take him. But I mean that's really just my opinion. I know that other people are probably not going to agree with me, and they're going to say you can't take another guard. But honestly, if you're just
Bullshit.
drafting for fit at this point, then I don't know what you're doing because you don't. Again, I know we've said it a million times, but you know Spurs don't have the guy yet, or we don't know if they are on the roster. We're not sure if they're on the roster yet, and he's one of those kind of guys who, not only is he a phenomenal athlete, and he gets a lot of like flack for being raw offensively, but defensively, I think he's arguably top 3, top 4 defender in this class. Got really good feet, got really good instincts. Very, very, very strong. Despite only being 186, he's a former football player. He didn't even commit to playing basketball full time until he got to high school. And he's very physical. I mean, he's not going to be an easy guy to get past. Man to man, he's really good. Off ball, he's really solid. And I do think like the offense is going to be a little bit of a question mark. He finishes really well at the rim. He's a lob threat off ball. He can shoot a little bit, but really that's the biggest qualm with me is his shooting. Like if he never becomes a shooter, then I'm not really sure he's ever going to be the go-to scorer that some people have said he might be able to be one day. There were some flashes from the mid-range that were really promising, especially off the dribble. But if I'm not correct, or incorrect, I think he only took like one dribble jumper from 3 all season long, which obviously that's not very good considering he only shot like mid-20s from 3. So it's I don't know, it's tough, but I do like Keon Johnson a lot. He's someone who easily is top 10 for me in this draft.
If he can get like a 35% 3 on 3 attempts per game, what do you think his offensive ceiling is? Like realistic ceiling?
Yeah, if he can do that, then at that point, unlike some of the players that the Spurs have on their roster right now, you're able to leverage your gravity as a shooter
Oh wow.
in a way that like players are never going to go under the screen. They're always going to go over with you because they don't want you to shoot. Because if you're an above average shooter, like look with like Lonnie, he's just an average shooter, and people don't want to leave him out there. He only shot like 36%. People don't want to leave him out there. So if Keon's doing that, he can leverage that as a way to attack the basket. He's got an insane first step. As we know, he broke the vertical record at the Combine, 48 inches, which obviously that can be a little bit overblown. Like, just being able to jump high doesn't necessarily matter. But he's not just explosive, like, with a runway. He's pretty explosive even in a crowd. So if he's able to do those sort of things and learn to be a better decision maker with the ball in his hands, like find his teammates, like there's a lot of parts of his games that need to fledge out. But as, like 18, 19-year-olds go, I really like him.
Awesome.
I'm trying to find where is my draft?
Ooh, Mac. Yeah.
What did Mac say?
So if there's another guard to take, what about Book Knight? I don't know. Say
Yeah.
if he's available, we have to take him.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. So Book Knight is a guy I'm super high on too. I'm not going to talk about him like super long because I want y'all to obviously have an opportunity to talk. But for me, Book Knight easily right after Cade, Mobley, Green, Suggs, Barnes,
Ooh.
and Giddy. I've got Book Knight. At this point, he's ahead of Kaminga for me because you sort of know what
Oh
Book
my
Knight
God.
is. I love him. He's 7th for me on my big board. I really, really, really love James Book Knight.
Does he have first option potential?
I think so. Yeah, I think he could be your sort of alpha scorer. In terms of being like a playmaking hub, like someone who's going to get his teammates involved, I don't really know that he's going to do that at a high level. He wasn't really much of a passer at UConn, but not only is he incredibly creative off the dribble, he's got a tight dribble, he's got a diverse dribble package, but he has good burst, he's got good athleticism vertically. He's definitely not stiff. Like when you think of DeJounte, I know that he gets his own in the mid-range, but he's a little stiff. Like you can
Yeah.
say that he's a little stiff. This guy is super fluid, really good athlete, got good straight line speed, got a good pull-up jumper from mid-range, and he can finish at the rim really well. And so I like a lot of the things he does there. And then off-ball, he's one of the best movers off-ball. He's still going to kind of figure some other things out to be a better player. Like he's not a good three-point shooter. You know, he tends to sort of fade away on any sort of motion shots, so that's going to be tough. Like, will he be able to be utilized off ball as a three-point shooter? Probably not right away, but he's a
Yeah.
solid enough defender that I'm convinced that if you don't have him in your top 7, top 8, then you didn't see enough of him at UConn because he was really, really good at UConn this season.
So if Garuba's the best defender, who's like your second and third best in this draft class?
Yeah, so Garuba is definitely, to me, far and away the number 1 defender overall in this class. But if you're looking at number 2, for me, it's Evan Mobley. He's one of those rare big men, and I'll sort of throw him in, what's his name? Kaminga in as a big man as well. But he's one of those rare big men, sort of like a Anthony Davis, Bam Adebayo, Draymond Green sort of big man who can switch potentially 1 through 5. He's got really good feet. He's got excellent lateral mobility. He's got an insane wingspan. I think it's something like 7'5", 7'6". It's very
Damn.
long.
Sorry,
and then he's
I have
got
the
really
highlights
good
on.
vertical athleticism. No, he's not like super explosive, but he can get up pretty well. He'll challenge every shot. He's not afraid of assignments. He's really locked in on that end. So I really like him. And just, again, being able to be a rim protector and be able to switch on the perimeter, that's really, really valuable, especially if you're like 7 feet tall. So he's number 2 for me. And then, this might be like a little bit controversial, but I think Davion Mitchell is number 3 for me, just on pure like tenacity, technique alone. I do have some concerns with him overall because he is
He's
so small.
small.
He's only
Yeah.
6'1" with a 6'3" wingspan. But as far as like defenders went, like the tape at Baylor, everything is really excellent. Like there's really nothing to pick apart. The only concern is like, is that going to translate to the next level? Are guys going to be bigger, stronger, longer, faster? And I think he'll be fine, but I don't know that he'll have a ton of like defensive versatility. Like think Trey Jones, really, really tenacious point of attack defender, really good man to man, but just sort of small. Like, and at that
Yeah.
point that you sort of have that going against you. And unfortunately, like Trey did not post good defensive numbers in the NBA or in the G League last year. But I think, that's partly his size, partly adjusting the game.
No, we have some pushback, man.
Also,
I
I was going to tell you, if you want to, I'm streaming my tab, so you don't have to watch the live stream for the clip. Just letting you know.
Oh
Nick.
yeah, I keep it open for the chat though.
All right, go ahead.
Emo Holic 99 says, I would argue Isaiah Jackson is the best defender in the draft. What do you think about that?
I would pretty vehemently disagree. He's really good defensive playmaker, and I think people sometimes get stats like blocks per game and steals per game mixed up with actual like defensive talent.
Yeah.
I think those things are really valuable, obviously. And I wrote about Isaiah Jackson today, actually, for Pounding the Rock. I put him, I believe, 8th on my 7th or 8th on the list of players who are lottery talents who the Spurs have interviewed. And the reason I say that he's not like a great defender is because, yes, he had 5 blocks per 40 minutes, which was, I think, 4th in the nation last season. And yes, he averaged 1.5 steals per 40 minutes, which together is, 6.5 stocks. That's really, really good. but he also averaged almost 6 fouls per 40 minutes. So
Damn.
fouls a ton. He also gets lost on backdoor cuts. He's super thin. He's only 208 pounds. He's 6'10", so he's a little undersized for a center, and he mostly played power forward for Kentucky. So I think positionally he's going to be challenged. The learning curve is going to be super steep, and if he was fouling that much in college, imagine how much he's going to foul at the NBA level, where everybody is more skilled, everybody is bigger, everybody is stronger, everybody is faster. I think he's a project. I don't think he's coming in right away and being an impactful defender. I think you'll probably see flashes where he's making incredible plays that few other players can make, sort of like Jackson Hayes did out of the University of Texas a few years ago.
Yeah.
Nobody genuinely thinks that, Jackson Hayes is a good defender. He's still figuring things out, and I think Isaiah Jackson can be put in that category as well.
We have one more question so far, like about players, and I don't know anything about this guy because I thought he was way out of reach. What are your thoughts on Moody? I know you liked him. I know you put him at first in your article, I believe.
Yeah, I did. I put Moody first, and I'll go ahead and just sort of I'm not going to read directly from the article, but basically my thoughts on Moody is it doesn't matter too much because he's probably going to be gone. I think there's a good chance that Golden State takes him at 7. They brought him in for a workout. They said they really liked him. He said that he enjoyed his workout when he was on that media, the pre-draft media press conference the other day. And personally, I wouldn't take, as much as I like him individually, just in this class, in terms of the fit on the roster, I think you would probably have to move things around to make him work. I mean, he is a guard. He is 6'6". He's 205. He reminds me a lot of Keldon in his tenacity attacking the rim. He's super physical, got a really good frame. He's 205 pounds, so he's filled that out pretty nicely. He's really strong, but at this point, he's a good shooter. He's a good stay-and-still shooter. He's a solid defender. I think he doesn't really have the fastest feet, but he's really strong and he understands positioning and angles. But I don't know, to me that almost sounds a little bit like Keldon with a jump shot, and obviously I think Keldon is a better player at this point. That's not there's no doubt in my mind, but that Keldon's the better player. But I just think there's too much positional and size overlap and skill overlap for him to really make sense. The only way you're getting him is if you're trading up.
Yeah.
And I just wouldn't for Moody.
Dude, I think we should just draft at 29 every year. We've hit the nail on the head, man.
Who has 29? Let's
I mean, you could probably find some good value there. I think someone who might be available, depending on how far he slips, is JT Thor. If you like Kai Jones, you'll love JT Thor. He's sort of Kai Jones-esque in frame and skill, and unfortunately he just didn't post as good of efficiency. And he's a guy who I firmly believe if he had decided to go back to Auburn for a sophomore season, continue working on his body, improving his game, I think he would be a lottery pick easily in 2022. But because he decided to stay in this draft, he's probably going to fall towards the end of the first round.
So do you think we should take him at 22 if we got the Lakers pick?
There are a few other guys who I like a little more than him, just because I do think he is a project. I don't think he's going to be impactful right away at all. I think he's going to be someone who you're going to need to work with. But if another guy falls, who is Trey Mann, I know I'm pretty high on him. I know some people are not. I saw him in SB Nation mock draft from Ricky O'Donnell, who I had on my podcast. He had him 26th or something. I really buy into him. I understand that there's a lot of reasons not to, but if I'm the Spurs, I'm adding him even though he's a guard because he can score at all 3 levels. He shot over 40% from 3 this year on 5 attempts, and over 85% of his baskets this season were unassisted. So he creates almost everything that he does, and he was really efficient. 46 from the field, 41 from 3, I think 84 or 85% from the free throw line.
83.
And he's got a mid-range jumper, and he's also able to finish at the rim. That's something that I'm kind of worried about at the next level, though. Even though he has a pretty good vertical, I think was rumored to be somewhere around 40. He just isn't explosive in space, and really at the college level, unless he was on a breakaway or something, he mostly finished below the rim. And when he was met with elite length, he didn't really finish that well. So there are definitely some problems there. He's not really a great distributor for a guy who wants to play point guard. That's definitely something he's got to work out, but high-end outcome, he could be someone who is an alpha scorer. Although he's sort of, I guess, if you wanted to downgrade Book Knight in almost every way, he's a guy who you could maybe aim for.
Rich off welfare with the funny comment. He says, I can envision Bill Land saying Thor dropping the hammer.
Trey Mann went 25th in KOC's latest mock draft. So
Yes, I mean, I know he's all over the place. I mean, and really, honestly, this draft is all that way.
it's
It's not
like-
as easy as last year's.
I think there's gonna be so many damn surprises. I think. What do you, I think this is slightly a hot take, but I think Kuminga drops like to late top 10. Like I don't
9.
like yeah, I can like 9. I
I
don't
don't think they'll let him fall.
I don't
too
think-
far. Like
I
I'm
don't
looking
think-
at teams.
I don't think he drops out of the top 10, but I think he drops to like late top 10 though.
He could. I mean, I see that KOC has him at 8 here on his mock draft. And if he does fall out of that like top 5, top 6, I really don't see the Magic passing on him a second time. But, you know, who knows? I mean, for me, he's a guy who I'm high on because he has shown some really, you know, top end level flashes of being able to create for himself, for being able to shoot off the dribble, for being able to fight through contact. He's got excellent measurables. He's a great athlete. You know, he made some really cool defensive plays, but it's like he is so young that, you know, he could be something really special, but then again, he could just be another guy. He could just be like, I guess like KOC is saying, like he could just be a Jeff Green where he has all the tools to be successful, but he ends up just being okay.
His shooting splits are so atrocious, though, man.
They're bad. Yeah, they're really
I remember you
bad.
talking about that on your podcast. That's why I was like, I was kind of shocked when you just said I'm high on him or whatever. I was like, damn, really?
Mostly because he's young and he showed those flashes. Like, for example, when some players are just like flat out bad, they just have bad shots. They're not good at shooting. It doesn't look natural for them. They look stiff. And when I look at Kuminga, it's not like, obviously the numbers are really bad. I don't have them in front of me. I could probably find them in a second. So yeah, he shot 39% from the field, 25% from 3, almost 63% from the free throw line. And those are bad, but when you look at it, he was pretty smooth shooting the ball. He looked comfortable shooting the ball. He's a really fluid athlete. He looks really comfortable with the ball in his hands. Really, for me, it's the decision making. And he's a bad decision maker. But to be fair, he's 18 years old. He's not from the United States. He hasn't been playing basketball forever. You know, he's still learning the game. And to me, that the fact that he showed high-end flashes of being able to create for himself, be able to shoot off the dribble, being able to finish at the rim, not just like, you know, decently, but really, really well, like against length, against really good athletes, his explosiveness, his physical profile, all those things. For me, I'm willing to bet on it if I'm a team in need of like a potential all-star at some point, because if you can round his game out, this kid, I believe, is the 3rd or 4th youngest kid in this class. Like, he's not even going to be 19 by the time the draft happens.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so that's the only reason I'm high on him. He could easily be a guy who, like KOC is saying, is just a Jeff Green, because you know, if I don't know if y'all remember, but going all the way back to Jeff Green, he was like supposed to be the sidekick to KD in Seattle, and it didn't work out. You know, it didn't ever pan out. He never really put things together, and he just became a journeyman. And you know, that could just be what Jonathan Kuminga's destined for if he doesn't round out the rest of his game.
Yeah, and his shades of I mean, it's twice, right? So, well, actually, never mind. I was thinking of Gorgie, but Luol Deng, he had him up there. I know he had some pretty good years, but like, I wonder if he's referring to either peak Luol or kind of like early and late career. You know, like kind of a 12-point per game guy.
Yeah, I was watching his video earlier today that he did on Kuminga, and he had some opinions that I didn't necessarily share. I kind of trust KOC over me at this point. I think he probably knows more about basketball, in my opinion. But he was saying that Luol Deng, like prime Luol Deng, which is not a bad player at all. Like, that's a guy who made a couple of all-star teams in his prime. So,
All right, so we're gonna move on because we got breaking news. I got a red alert, so I set up my light to go off like a
Oh,
alarm.
I know what you're talking about.
So, from Shams Sharania, beginning with next season, the NBA will implement new rules to reduce non-basketball moves used to draw fouls. Sources tell The Athletic in Stadium. And NBA officiating staffs will be trained to identify and properly rule overt non-basketball actions to initiate contact with defender, such as offensive players launching to defender, abruptly veer off path, kick leg at abnormal angles, or his off-arm hooks the defender. So this is kind of a big thing in terms of you're looking at guys like DeMar, like James Harden, a lot of guys that really jump into their contact.
You
And
missed the two biggest ones.
who else did I miss?
Dude, Trey Young and Joel Embiid are both about to average 7 points per game less than they would normally.
I think
Easily.
I think Harden takes the biggest hit out of all of them.
No. It is, dude. Trey Young is has surpassed Harden as that guy. Like far and away from every news outlet I've seen, from every single Twitter beat. It's Trey Young, dude. He is the biggest foul baiter I've ever seen. Like he takes the cake over prime foul baiting Harden. It is nuts. And of course he can do it because he's such a small guy and Harden's bigger, so he doesn't get all the calls. But Trey Young is getting the calls that Harden was getting a year or two ago, or even when he was at his prime in Houston, the superstar calls. And Trey's getting it at this point in his career. If they didn't implement this, he would be shooting 12 free throws a game, man, in a year or two. He is it's almost unfun to watch. And he even acknowledges it. He's like, there was somewhere where he tweeted or said something about well, they're going to have to fix it. I'm just going to exploit it until then, basically. Along those lines. Him and Joel are huge foul hogs, man.
Although Brett says it best, can we call it the James Harden rule? Because James Harden's been doing it for much longer.
Oh yeah, I mean they had to change the rules 2 or 3 years ago for him, right? And then he just found a different way to do it.
So, like I said, I think James Harden's game is going to take a hit. Well, guys, like you said, Trey Young are definitely going to take a hit from it. Joel Embiid, but man, James Harden's going to have a rough time with his.
I don't think so, man, because he's not even the first or second option on a team anymore.
I also think I tend to think that guys who are this elite at basketball, I know that we're annoyed with aesthetically how it looks, but guys who are this elite, that smart, that understand the game, they're going to find other ways to draw fouls. They're going to find other ways to get their buckets. They're going to find other ways to, score points. Because you think about the last time a rule was changed like this, really significantly. You think of Reggie Miller with the kick out rule where he's kicking his leg out, and even 20 years later, people are still kicking their legs out, and people were still drawing fouls that way, and honestly, I don't think it's going to change that much because you have a short off season to get all these refs trained up, right? And they're so used to giving people calls that I think it's going to be a gradual sort of move away from that, even if it is a rule that's implemented this year. So I just don't really think it's going to make a huge difference. Though I want it to, I'd love it to, because I'm I'm tired of watching that. But
I'm saying in a perfect world without neglect from referees enforcing the rules, it would change it in a major way. But we know how these refs are. It's kind of the same with NFL refs. I don't know why. I don't know if Scott Foster has a side gig, coaching the NFL too, but you see it in most major sports where it's sometimes they look at these new rules as tarnishing the game, if that makes sense. And I remember Joe Buck talking about it, at least in the NFL, and I can see it in the NBA happening too. They don't enforce all these rules the way they should. They're kind of taking away from the purity of the sport, and I can definitely see that happening with some of the more famous NBA refs. And it pains me to call an NBA ref famous because you really shouldn't know these guys' names and know them for being anything more than someone who enforces rules. But that's you don't want to see NBA refs trending every time they ref a playoff game. But we saw that every single game Scott Foster coached or ref this year.
So, in addition to it, if deemed more than marginal contact, say offensive player's contact impacts a defender's speed, quickness, balance, or rhythm, the play results in an offensive foul. A no call should result if contact is deemed marginal. So, I think there's going to be an adjustment period going into preseason and early offensive season, and I think you're going to see those guys take some offensive fouls early on. But I think midway through the season, it's going to change how their game is. They might not be as effective. I don't see them going to the line as much.